Welcome to The Debate.
Broadcasting to you live from Atchison, Kansas.
Bringing the warmth of the heartland to our intellectual discourse today. You know, usually when we talk about building a shelter against a storm, there's this expectation of pure, unyielding utility. Structural engineering, basically.
Right. Utilitarian.
Exactly. A tornado is coming across the plains, and the architect just points to a windowless, reinforced concrete bunker and says, you know, there it is. You go in there, and you are safe. It's binary. You survive or you don't. And honestly, it is deeply comforting to have that thick wall when the world outside is hostile.
Yeah, but then the storm passes, and you step out of the realm of mere biological survival and into the world of human flourishing, of meaning. Suddenly, that incredibly secure concrete bunker feels, suffocating.
Like a tomb.
Exactly. Like a tomb. We're looking at a structural landscape today that is completely paradoxical. What exactly are we building when we build a society? Are we building a home, or are we just building a highly efficient panic room?
Which brings us to the very foundation of how we live together. Today, we are asking a central question. Can civilization be built purely on fear, security, and sovereign power? Or does it fundamentally require wonder, moral truth, religion, family, local loyalty, and the dignity of ordinary people?
It's a huge question.
It is, and our discussion emerges directly from a foundational work of political philosophy. Thomas Hobbes' book, universally known as The Argument for the Leviathan. We're juxtaposing this against the robust, paradox-filled counter-perspective found in the works of G.K. Chesterton. I will be representing the Hobbesian view that human survival absolutely necessitates the social contract, sovereign authority, and the mitigation of fear above all else.
And I will be representing the Chestertonian view that true civilization actually relies on the Christian imagination, the sacredness of the ordinary family, and a deep, abiding suspicion of centralized power.
So let's start with the sheer, unsentimental reality of Hobbes' text. You really have to understand the historical trauma behind this argument. I mean, he's writing during the English Civil War.
Right. Blood in the streets.
Exactly. He is watching neighbors butcher neighbors over abstract concepts of divine right and parliamentary privilege. So he starts with a deeply empirical view of human nature. Man is fundamentally just matter in motion. We are biological machines driven by appetite and aversion.
It's a very bleak starting point.
Bleak, but realistic. Because without a central, awe-inspiring authority to keep us in check, the natural state of humanity is a war of all against all. In this state of nature, life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short.
It's famously pessimistic. But it's also fundamentally mechanical, isn't it?
It has to be mechanical to be reliable. The text points out that human beings lack a summum bonum, a universal greatest good. Think about it. My greatest good might be saving your soul by forcing you to convert to my religion. Your greatest good might be absolute free speech.
Right, and those conflict.
Violently. If we try to organize society around a greatest good, we will literally kill each other over the definition. However, the argument rightly identifies that we all share a summum malum, a greatest evil, and that is the terror of a violent death.
So fear is the glue.
Yes, because we all fear the knife in the dark, civilization becomes a necessary artificial construct. It is a massive Leviathan created by a social contract where individuals rationally surrender their natural right to all things in exchange for peace and security.
See, the opposing perspective rejects that entire premise from the root. Chesterton argues that man is not a mere machine driven blindly by appetite and aversion. Man is a total anomaly. He is a stranger upon the earth.
A stranger?
Yeah, he is a monstrosity, a creator, a broken God capable of both profound original sin and divine wonder. If you build your entire civilization around a summum malum, if you orient every law, every institution, every social norm around merely avoiding death, you do not actually get a civilization.
You get survival.
But you get a base and slavish eternity devoid of meaning. true civilization isn't built by terrified individuals surrendering their agency to an absolute state. It is built by free, ordinary people rooted in local loyalties, in the wildness of domesticity, and in the paradox of Christian chivalry, which actually values a noble disdain of death over the mere desperate preservation of biological life.
Okay, but let's look at the pure mechanics of human motivation here. The text is incredibly precise, describing the human body in literal mechanical terms. What is the heart but a spring? What are the nerves but so many strings?
Very industrial revolution imagery there.
But apt. If we strip away the romantic poetry about broken gods, self-preservation is our only reliable baseline. Fear is the ultimate rational motivator. And the text uses a brilliant, undeniable empirical challenge to anyone who denies this.
The locked doors, I imagine?
Exactly. It asks if man is not inherently driven by fear and by what he calls diffidence, which in this context means a kind of preemptive, paranoid distrust of his fellow man. Why do we lock our doors at night?
Right.
Why do you lock your chests even when you are inside your own home, knowing perfectly well there are laws and public officers outside? Our daily actions betray our true nature. We know what our neighbors are capable of.
The locked door argument is famous, sure, but it completely misunderstands the psychology of the person turning the key. The text points to the locked door as proof of our depravity and our terror of the outside world, but it misses the point of what is behind the locked door.
Which is what?
We don't just lock the door because we are terrified of the dark. We lock the door because we love the people inside. We are protecting the sacred space of the family.
But the threat from the outside is still the motivating factor for the lock. If there was no threat, you wouldn't need the lock.
Only half the factor. Let's look at the analogy of the cave. Hobbes starts his entire philosophical narrative in a dark, hypothetical cave of savagery, a state of nature where everyone is just swinging clubs at each other in the mud, right?
A war of all against all, yes.
But if we actually look at human history, the earliest cavemen weren't just terrified brutes hiding from wolves. They were artists. They went deep into the dark of Lascaux and Altamira to draw magnificent, graceful reindeer on the walls. They possessed wonder.
They also possess spears.
Yes, but man is an exception to nature. So I have to ask, if we construct a society solely on the fear of violent death, and we hand over all our power to a sovereign just to keep us from killing each other, don't we merely create a highly efficient prison? Does fear actually build a civilization, or does it just build a well-managed workhouse?
I think workhouse implies a tyrant who seeks to punish for the sake of punishment. The sovereign in the argument is a referee, and that referee is the necessary condition for any art, any family, or any drawing on a cave wall to exist at all.
You think so?
Absolutely. Without the sovereign maintaining order, the artist is murdered for his pigments, the family is destroyed for its food. This leads directly into the concept of liberty and the role of the state. In the text, the necessity of fear logically necessitates absolute power. The state must be the ultimate, undivided ruler.
Undivided being the key word there.
Undivided, yes. Liberty, in this framework, is very clearly and practically defined. It is the silence of the laws.
The silence of the laws. Meaning, wherever the Leviathan hasn't explicitly forbidden something, you are allowed to do it.
Exactly. Where the sovereign has not strictly regulated what you buy, what you sell, where you live, you are perfectly free. It's a very clean system. But the moment you divide power, the moment you allow competing authorities, like a powerful church or highly autonomous local governments, you inevitably slide back into factionalism and civil war. You crack the foundation of the bunker.
And here is where the Chestertonian view fundamentally collides with that logic. When you invest the state with that kind of absolute, undivided power, it never stays a mere referee. It inevitably morphs into a god.
That's a strong leap.
But it's true. It becomes an impersonal Leviathan that crushes the actual true cell of society, which is the family. The text views the state as the primary unit of order, but the home is the actual organic unit of human life. In fact, Chesterton argues that the home is the only true place of liberty because it is the only place of true anarchy.
Anarchy in the home. I think most parents would probably agree with you on a Tuesday night, but philosophically, what do you mean by that?
I mean that in a home, you can change the rules based on love and context. You can alter the schedule. You can be eccentric. You can eat breakfast for dinner.
Okay, fair enough.
The state, by contrast, is entirely coercive and rigid. The state cannot love you. It can only manage you. Have you considered the concept Chesterton outlines of Hudge and Gudge?
Hudge and Gudge. You'll have to unpack that one for me. I know it's a critique of modern power structures, but how does a dynamic actually operate?
It's brilliant, really. Hudge and Gudge represents the governing elite. Hudge is the elite collectivist. Think of the massive government bureaucrat, the central planner. Gudge is the elite individualist, the corporate monopolist, the oligarch.
So they're supposed to be political opposites.
On the surface, yes, they seem like political opposites, but they actually collude against the ordinary family under the guise of efficiency. They look at the messy, wild, independent life of an ordinary family, maybe a poor family, and they decide to manage it. They don't give the ordinary man what he actually wants, which is property, the ideal of 3 acres and a cow, a home of his own.
Well, because 3 acres and a cow is incredibly difficult to scale and manage from a central authority. It's inefficient.
Father or mother with the cold, sterile authority of a zoning board or an HR department. They oppress the ordinary person not out of cartoonish malice, but out of a cold, impersonal desire for systemic efficiency.
Look, that is a very politic defense of localism, but it heavily romanticizes a level of independence that is historically highly unstable.
Unstable?
Yes, highly unstable. If every home is its own anarchic kingdom, and every local loyalty to your clan, your town, your specific religious sect is elevated above the state, you have the exact recipe for the English Civil War.
Ah.
This is why the argument applies this need for absolute sovereignty to the most volatile area of human experience, which is religion.
A fascinating pivot. And this is where the stakes get incredibly high.
They do. The text explicitly argues that the sovereign must govern matters of faith to prevent discord. Why? Because of the epistemological terror of subjective revelation.
Epistemological terror. That's a good phrase for it.
Well, it's true. We cannot infallibly know another person's private divine revelation. If someone stands up in the town square and claims God spoke to them and told them the civil law is invalid, what objective evidence can they provide?
None.
None. It's entirely internal. So if the state allows competing religious claims where any zealot can claim a direct mandate from heaven that supersedes the civil law, it leads directly to bloodshed. We've seen it historically. Therefore, the state must dictate public doctrine. Religious power must be completely subordinate to civil power to maintain peace. The sovereign is the supreme pastor.
And this is where placing religion beneath politics destroys the only standard by which the state can possibly be judged. Think about the mechanical trap that has just been built.
It's not a trap, it's a safeguard.
No, it's a closed loop. If the state is the highest moral authority, if the Leviathan writes the rules of faith as well as the rules of the road, it can never, ever be rebuked. It becomes a suffocating loop. If the sovereign says, this unjust war is holy, you have no theological grounds to disagree. Orthodox religion provides what Chesterton might call the eternal revolution.
Meaning a constant state of rebellion? Because that's exactly what the text is trying to avoid.
Not violent rebellion now, but a constant transcendent standard of human perfection that checks tyrannical power. When you subordinate God to the sovereign, you are essentially saying that truth doesn't matter, only authority matters.
Which the text basically embraces.
Right. It practically says, this authority, not truth, makes law. But without a transcendent truth, the sovereign's power is just brute force. A civilization cannot sustain itself on brute force alone. It needs the belief that man is a broken god, and crucially, that there is an ultimate judge above the king. Without that, the state becomes an idol. It demands the kind of worship that should only be given to the divine.
Let's test that claim. Because I would invite you to look around us today. Let's bring this argument fully into the modern world. I would argue that the modern era is the ultimate undeniable vindication of the text. Look at our global systems right now. We have AI governance, vast bureaucratic safety nets, global economic surveillance, algorithmic management of resources and supply chains.
Yes, the exact realization of Hudge and Gudge on a digital scale.
But look at what it accomplishes. These technocratic systems are the modern Leviathan.
and they are doing exactly what the text prescribed, managing incredibly complex global threats. They mitigate the fear of poverty, disease, and systemic collapse.
They manage the symptoms, maybe.
They provide a baseline of unparalleled physical security, staving off the anarchy that would naturally arise from a highly competitive, globalized population of 8 billion individuals. The algorithm manages the diffidence. It manages the distrust. We have willingly traded some localized chaotic liberty for the greatest era of security, medicine, and peace in human history. The Leviathan works.
See, I look at those exact same modern systems, and I see them not as a victory, but as a profound existential crisis. Yes, this triumph of technocracy and algorithmic bureaucracy has provided a baseline of physical security. We have insulated the bunker.
Successfully.
But at what cost? It has created an epidemic of deep loneliness, social fragmentation, and a devastating crisis of meaning. The efficiency of the modern world is exactly what Chesterton warned about. It is a dull popular despotism.
But how is providing a safety net and managing systemic risk a despotism? Surely a predictable, algorithmically stable society, even if it's a bit dull, is preferable to the raw, unmitigated risk of nature?
It is despotism because men are being managed like livestock rather than treated as dignified souls.
That's a bit harsh, don't you think?
I don't think it is. A technocracy doesn't ask what a human being is actually for. It only asks how to keep him fed, pacified, and compliant. It creates a world where we are constantly monitored by our screens, where our local loyalties are dissolved into a massive global homogeny. We have the absolute safety of the workhouse, but we have completely lost the wildness of domesticity. The modern state, the modern algorithm, tries to fulfill every biological and psychological need, but it cannot provide a reason to live.
So you're arguing the security itself is the problem?
I'm arguing that when security is the only goal, it hollows us out. We are kept alive by machines, but we have forgotten how to be men. We have lost what Chesterton called the flags of the world, the passionate, romantic attachments to specific places, specific traditions, and specific truths. The algorithm feeds us constantly, but we are starving for meaning.
Let me challenge that interpretation of the modern condition, because I think it misses the order of operations. Without the immense, undivided power of the sovereign state, whether that takes the form of a 17th century monarch or a 21st century algorithmic safety net, all of those higher human pursuits you value are literally impossible.
How so?
Art, literature, wonder, the sanctity of the family. These are fragile things. They are luxuries. They would be utterly destroyed by the perpetual war of all against all. You cannot have the luxury of a cozy anarchic family hearth if warlords are pillaging your village or if the global supply chain collapses and your family starves. Security is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for any human flourishing. The Leviathan is the wall that keeps the wolves out so that the family can exist inside.
But a wall is not a home. And a civilization built only on security is a hollow shell. If the wall is all there is, if the entire focus of our existence, our politics, and our technology is just reinforcing the concrete and monitoring the perimeter, then the people inside have no life worth living.
Even if they're safe.
Even if they are perfectly safe. True society requires more than just the avoidance of violent death. It requires the sanctity of the ordinary home, the freedom to make mistakes, the dignity of moral agency, and the fundamental belief that humans are more than just matter in motion trying to survive. We are not just biological mechanisms dodging threats. We are spiritual beings seeking truth and love.
We arrive at a profound tension here. On one side, we have the undeniable necessity of order, the very real terror of human fallibility, and the heavy structural requirements needed to keep a society from tearing itself apart. You need the wall.
You do need a wall, yes.
Right. On the other side, we have the deep, undeniable human need for transcendent meaning, for localized liberty, and for a moral horizon that extends far beyond mere survival.
It is the permanent tension between the skeleton that holds the body upright and the breath that actually gives it life. You need both, But if you mistake the skeleton for the soul, you end up worshiping a corpse.
And that is why the text and its counter-arguments offer endless depths for us to explore regarding the modern condition. The listener is left to look at the world around them, the algorithms in their pockets, the families in their homes, the institutions they rely on, the local communities they love, and decide which philosophy truly sustains the world. Are we managing a massive risk, or are we cultivating a human soul?
And what are we willing to trade for safety?
Exactly. So we return to the image we began with. The architect points to the reinforced concrete bunker. It will withstand the storm. It is highly efficient. It will keep you alive. But the lingering question remains once you lock that heavy steel door and the diffidence is managed and the storm passes, what exactly are you going to do inside?
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for joining us here in Atchison, Kansas.